Hello there. Today I'm taking a look at a sparkling wine from Spain. It's a Cava. This is from Freixenet and it's their Cordon Negro. This is the Gran Seleccion Brut, but most of us just know it as Cordon Negro. Freixenet are from Penedès. Cava is predominantly produced in the Penedès region but can be made elsewhere in Spain. So we're in the Barcelona region and they're based in the town of Sant Sadurní d'Anoia, which is probably the principal producing area for Cava. And Freixenet are in fact the world's biggest producer of bottle fermented sparkling wine, called traditional method, and they're also the largest exporter of Cava. The original founding families of Freixenet still have a 50% stake in the business, but because there are two families involved, the foundation date is hard to establish clearly. The label states Freixenet founded in 1861. However, the two families, the Bosch family and the Sala family, came together actually in 1914, and so that was when the brand that is now Freixenet was actually formed. But actually, the Bosch family had had an estate, La Freixenada, since something like the 12th century. So there are a number of dates there you can take for the estate's foundation. 1914, however, sees the union of the two families when Pedro Bosch is united with Dolores Sala Vive. The two of them work hard to build the company up. In fact, through the company's history, after the Second World War, they lost control at one stage but were able to buy the company back. They built up their sparkling wine business. However, it wasn't until 1974 that the Cordon Negro brand was actually created. More recently, in 2018, the German sparkling wine producer Henkel bought a 50% share in the company, and then in 2019 the group was renamed to reflect a more sort of equal partnership there, and so it became Henkel Freixenet. Now this particular wine is a blend of the three traditional Cava varieties. So the blend comprises 40% of Parellada, 25% of Xarel·lo, and the remaining 35% is a grape variety called Macabeo, which most of us know better as Viura when it's grown in Rioja. Of the varieties, the Macabeo is picked early, that's picked in late August. Then the Xarel·lo is picked, and then it's not until early October that the Parellada is finally harvested. Everything is hand-picked because, particularly for sparkling wine, the fruit needs to be in really good condition when it reaches the winery. So everything's hand-picked into 25 kilogram cagettes, into shallow boxes for transport to the press house. Pressing goes on using pneumatic presses to try and get as clean a juice as possible. And after the press, the juice is settled for 24 hours, again to try and allow the solids to fall out of it and to allow the fermenting juice to be as clean as possible. Fermentation goes on in stainless steel tanks, so there's no oak influence whatsoever. The ferments will last 10 to 12 days, and they're done at quite low temperature to preserve aromas. So we're looking at sort of 14 to 16 degrees C. And fermentation goes on with yeasts that have been specially selected by Freixenet from the yeasts within previous fermentations. So they have their own yeast culture, which is specific to them. Once fermentation finishes, the wine's blended, it's racked, it's clarified, and then it's bottled with a small addition of sugar and yeast to allow the second fermentation to commence in the bottle. It's topped with a crown cap, as you would with a sort of a beer bottle. And once the second fermentation is finished, aging goes on for between 12 and 18 months with the dead yeast left in the bottle to promote autolysis. Now, yeast autolysis takes a while to take effect, and in fact the breakdown really doesn't happen until about 9 months to 12 months after fermentation. So with a 12 to 18 month period of bottle age, you're just starting to get the beginnings of yeast autolysis character, and it's helping to fix the bubbles, but you're probably not going to get as fine a bubble as for a vintage champagne or something like that, where it will have spent 4 or 5 years in bottle or longer, and the bubbles have become incredibly fine. Dégorgement goes on using a process invented in Cava. There's an automated process of riddling using something called a gyropalette, in which the bottles are placed in cages and automatically agitated to move the dead yeast to the top of the bottle, where it can be frozen and expelled at dégorgement. The wine is given a dosage of 9 grams per litre, which allows it to be labelled as Brut. The label states that the wine is vegan, so clearly they've not used any animal products in fining or anything like that. So let's have a look at the wine, shall we? The wine's got a really pale greenish colour, and there are fine bubbles rising. They rise quickly as I agitate it, but I'm not able to release the entire of the sparkle from the wine. It'll settle and you still get bubbles rising. They're rising continuously there. So let's have a look at the aromas, shall we? There's a yeasty note, certainly, but there's also behind that, there's a note of green apple. There's quite a sharp malic note and a little bit of lemony citric acidity. There are also creamy and milky notes coming from the leesiness there. So let's have a taste, shall we? On the palate, you're getting a lovely mouthful of very fine bubbles. There's a really clean green apple note to the fruit, and it's a fresh green apple. And then as the wine is sort of drying in my mouth, I'm getting more of a sort of a slightly bitter note, slightly toasty note at the end. It might actually be described as sort of slightly rubbery, which is sometimes a pointer for Cava. It's not rubberiness to an extent that it's objectionable, but there is just that sort of slight sulphur-derived note at the back of the palate there, where there's a sort of a slight bitterness. But the mousse is very fine. I think that really quite exceptional, and still persisting to rise in the glass. So that's excellent. The wine is light and fresh. Its acidity is following through. The initial crisp acidity has a sort of a tartness towards the finish, which is really quite mouth-watering. It's giving the wine length, but the wine probably has more length and elegance and less breadth. It's a fairly light, fresh style of sparkling wine. There's not a huge amount of complexity or depth to the wine. It's just well made and well balanced. You're not getting hugely complex, toasty, yeasty, brioche aromas or anything like that. There's just this really rather lovely green apple note that's just framed by creamy hints, touches of yeast, maybe a slight toastiness, but that's all very gentle, and it's harmoniously sitting in the background behind the really quite bright, elegant and well-defined fruit. I wouldn't really consider aging this for a long time. Often bottle fermented sparkling wines will be better if you can keep them in your cellar for a year. I probably wouldn't keep it much longer than that. This will become a little bit richer with that time, but actually at the moment its elegance and its freshness is really its virtue. So I think this is a wine that's ideal to drink in its first year of life. So thank you very much for watching. I do hope you've enjoyed the video. If you have, do please press the like button. If you know people who would be interested in watching it, do please consider sharing it with them. It would be great if you could sign up and follow us on YouTube. We'd love to have your support there. And also, please leave any comments, any feedback you have, we'd love to receive in the comments box below. Something about the wines, something about the tasting we were doing, or anything else related to that would be great to hear. More importantly though, I do hope you'll take the time to come and join us for another tasting in the very near future. Thanks again. Bye for now.